Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel for yet another What We Really Learned from the past Chelsea game. This time, Chelsea 4, Morecambe 0 in the FA Cup, in the third round of the FA Cup. But, of course, there is so much more to discuss. It was fun, have a little bit of a weekend off, focus on the FA Cup. Let's not be too worried. We kind of knew we were going to get the win. Of course, had we not won, everything would have been much, much worse. But we did. So it was kind of like a bit of a rest from all the stress we've been going through for a little while now. But there is a lot to talk about. Of course, the Fulham game is now being postponed to a day after. And, it's still an upcoming game. It's an upcoming difficult period. And I'm not here by myself. I'm joined by the man himself, the man that's doing bits all over the shop, whether it's Twitter, whether it's YouTube. Matisse himself to discuss everything, whether it's Kai Havertz's improvement, whether it's Timo Werner finally getting on the score sheet, the discussion of, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Billy Gilmore, possibly even Kepa, and all sorts, discussing all of that. So be sure to check Matisse's channel out. Just hit the @ in the title, or the link is down in the description. But, mate, how you doing? And what do you think about the game?
All good, man. I'm all good. The games went great. Well, we didn't. For me, it wasn't brilliant at best, but we definitely saw improvements in certain phases of play and certain goals. It was nice to see link up between certain players and in better positions. But we have to obviously take it in some sort of context of the fact that it was Morecambe. They League Two, 7th place in the league. I'm pretty sure they made a few changes as well because they had a disease outbreak during the week as well. So I think there was like 5 changes from their normal lineup or something like that. So yeah, it wasn't exactly opposition to be taking too many conclusions from, but there were still things that happened in that game where you can look at it and be like, okay, cool, this is more of what you wanted to see in previous matches where we've been quite poor.
Exactly, that's exactly what I thought. I mean, to be honest, going into it, we turned out with a stronger 11 than I thought. I expected and kind of hoped for a couple of more youngsters. I did expect the likes of Havertz and Werner to start just to help them gain some confidence. I was hoping for the likes of Henry Laurenz possibly to start at right back, depending on Reese's fitness, because if Azpi has to start against Fulham again, I would have said just give him a rest. And Tino Andrin starting didn't really. Obviously, Hudson-Odoi turned out to have a really good game. But in my opinion, we could have just let him sit this one out and him start against Fulham. That would have been sufficient. But at the end of the day, you can't really complain. You totally understand that. Even Lee Parker, even after the game, was it Lee Parker, whatever that other guy's called on Chelsea TV, asked Frank, realistically, had we won the last 6 games, he probably would have fielded a much younger and more inexperienced team yesterday, which would have made sense. But it was important. And, especially if the next games do go our way now, you can only say made all of the correct decisions. Like you said, Morecambe had obviously a very difficult preparation period. That was the first game since Boxing Day, 10 days of self-isolation and all sorts. I didn't actually know about this new outbreak. So, certainly not ideal for the poor shrimps. I just find it hilarious that they're called the shrimps. Imagine they were a Premier League team and their nickname is just the shrimps.
Honestly, I was saying it as well, is that they're a town that's more known for fishing than football. So so that's just how it goes with them.
Yeah, why not? Why not? I mean, you can't have it. You can't have everything your way, I guess. But I mean, I guess we just go through the game really quickly before we talk about more individual things. Obviously, we got a goal fairly early on through Mason Mount. We didn't really create nothing because Morecambe set really, really deep, with 7, 8 players in the box pretty much at all times. And it doesn't really matter who you are. People telling me we weren't that good. And no, we weren't incredible. Of course we weren't. But it doesn't really matter who you're playing against. If they put 7, 8 men in the box, you're going to have to shoot and cross the ball. What you're going to do. You're not going to dribble through everybody. Not even Hazard can do that. It doesn't really, like I said, it doesn't really matter who you're playing against. So we did get that shot, from distance through Mason Mount, scored finally. I wish we took shots from distance much more often. But yeah, that worked, and then it kind of became a bit of a staler game. Obviously even before that, it was the moment of the cross turn shot that Kepa just about kept out, and then Timo Werner scored for the first time in 13 games. Beautiful cross,
Relief.
Lovely movement. Yeah, exactly, lovely movement by Kai. And then what game was it when he basically kicked it out from the goal line? Do you remember what game that was?
Kicked it out from the goal line. I'm not sure, actually. I'm not sure. Oh, where the ball came across the box and he literally it was a simple tap and he kind of kicked it up against the crossbar.
Yeah, exactly. What game was that?
I'm not sure. I feel like it was a Champions League game, but it's hard to remember. We've played so many fixtures now. But I do remember the game you're talking about. Yeah, I do remember the moment. It was a bit of a madness. I mean, look, this is why I was happy for Werner to start this game, because for me it was like, do or die. You have to score against Morecambe, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? That's League Two opposition, and that was really on the checklist of before the game going into it. Werner needs to get a goal. I don't think that plays him into starting against Fulham up front. I still don't think, it wasn't a masterclass performance from him or anything like that against the League Two side. But it's good to get a goal on his it's good for him to get it on the stat, and hopefully he can come off the bench against Fulham in the future and contribute. But for me, the game, the most pleasing thing was two players, Havertz and Hudson-Odoi, because those are the two players that I've really been crying out for, where I just didn't feel like we were utilising them the way we should. Hudson-Odoi hasn't been getting enough minutes for me. From pure meritocracy standpoint, he's been probably the best winger in the last few weeks. On form, scoring goals, defensive contribution, crossing ability is always been high with him. Able to switch the play and double up with Pulisic on the left and give space to the right for Azpilicueta to get crosses in against Aston Villa, I believe. So Hudson-Odoi has got a lot of weapons in his armour, and I feel like we've just underutilized them. We haven't really used what we have. We haven't been able to use him in the moments that he's needed most. He came on against Arsenal, played very well as well. But, there's been moments where he's played well and been dropped out of the squad or been dropped out of the side, and I haven't really understood it. And then with Havertz, I've kept saying, 4-3-3 was not the issue for Kai Havertz.
Thank you. Yes,
I had it. I said, and the thing is, I feel like maybe people choose to put words in my mouth and don't listen when I say what I've got to say. But I never said that Kai needs to move into a number 10 position for him to thrive. That was never a tweet or thought process that went through my mind. But my problem is that he's been in the wrong zones. He's been too deep. An Athletic report came out on it. Liam Tooney did a really good report about Kai being very deep this season. He is a player that in the final third can give you goals, give you assists. And it was great to see against Morecambe where he was in the box. Thank God, finally, we get crosses into the box and Kai Havertz is in there to challenge for headers. There hasn't been enough numbers in the box in recent weeks, and then we haven't had the right players in the box, whether it's Kante going up against Arsenal. Tammy, we know his heading ability isn't strong, but you're not bringing on Giroud. If you're going to cross a lot, it's not wildly entertaining, but it's worked in the past for Liverpool. I've got no problem with it, but you need to get numbers in the box, and you need to have the right people in the box. And the weekend was just a glimpse of Kai Havertz finally being further forward in a 4-3-3. Lampard played a 4-3-3 his whole career. He got into the box. So, whose fault it is, whether it's, you've got to put partly on Lampard, because for me, he's in control of where players are on the pitch. He's got to give them the instructions to do that. But Havertz's average position was always so deep in the last, before he got dropped from the squad for a few weeks, which now it seems like it'll be good for him to come back in. But it was good to see the knockdown, for Werner, and great to see him score the headed goal. He played high up the pitch, played false nine, plays right wing. He's very versatile. We'll maintain that again. It's not about position. It's just about the zones that he's in. And I understand why he's been deeper. Probably because of Kante. Kante is known for his short passing, give it and go. He's not one of these players that are going to break lines with ground passing. He's not one of those players that are going to, do the Cesc Fabregas type pass. He's there to break up play, win the ball back and give it simple. But in turn, that means Havertz probably has to drop a lot deeper. And that was, for me, again, another change on the weekend. Gilmour played, and maybe that just allowed Kai to go further forward. But it would be nice to see in the future, Kai is the one with the license to go forward into the box when we're going out wide and slowly make his way into the box, including the opposite winger, and allow Mount to be a bit deeper and slot in alongside. So those two players in particular, I really hope, A, they start against Fulham, and B, they're operating in the same kind of zones that they were against Morecambe or those lower opposition.
For sure. I completely agree. I mean, that's exactly the thing I kept trying to go on about, because it's, like you said, it's not about playing as a number 10. You can play as a very attacking number 8. It just means that you have to get into the right areas, whether it's the half spaces, and then eventually once you get there in the box, that's all that matters. And Lampard even spoke about that yesterday, like in post-match press conference or whatever it was, saying like, because he's clearly seen this, that people, criticized.
100% he sees the criticism on Twitter. I have no doubts now, because it's not the first time he said something in an interview relating to something that's being said on Twitter.
Exactly.
And I've spoken to a few people behind the scenes, and they have good word that he does check social media. Not that he has a burner like people say, but he does know what's happening on social media, because that's the only real way of gauging the crowd at the moment at Chelsea, because there's no fans. But you look back at our Man City game, which is obviously the most recent Premier League game. Ziyech swinging in crosses to Werner and Pulisic, and people wonder why there's some criticism. Of course, there's going to be some criticism for that. Neither of those two players can header. The Ziyech crosses were not aimless, but they were just flashes across the box. There was no real presence in the box to hit like there was against Morecambe. So, for me, if you're going to go with a crossing tactic, where we have the most crosses in the league, then Giroud or Havertz minimum needs to be in the box. We saw it against Tottenham all the way back when Abraham was missing the chances at the near post. We didn't bring Giroud on early enough either in that game for me as well. If you're going to cross, then you need players that can judge the flight of the ball, whether it be volley, air, or anything, because we know the speed in which Reece James will cross at. Morata even was very good with his head. Hudson-Odoi setting him up. Azpilicueta got a cross in the weekend. He used to set him up for crosses. If you're going to cross, you need people that can head the ball. And against Man City, it was Werner and Pulisic in the box. Against Arsenal, there was Kante playing in the higher up the pitch as the game went on. He was challenging for crosses. People think you make these things up. This is legitimately what happened. And, it's fine to criticise that. Like I said, it's only Morecambe. We got a long way to go before we get back to where we should be. Fulham will be another test, but they are 18th in the league, so
But hey, Arsenal were 15th, and look how that went. So it doesn't really say that much. But then again, I mean, we beat Sheffield United quite comfortably. But that's exactly it. First of all, it does seem very, telling that Frank certainly sees these things, whether he looks at them himself or whether he has people telling him what's going on. Doesn't really matter. He certainly sees what's going on. But going back to this 4-3-3, Kai is a 10, whatever discussion, like Frank said, it's not an 8. Isn't just there to run in straight lines from his own box to the opposition's box. That's not their job. But it is, 100% true that Kai was very deep, too deep at times. The only thing I am not 100% sure about, because that wasn't the case when he played so well against Burnley before, obviously, he caught a certain something. So I don't know. Obviously, we sit here and we judge it, and of course, it's easy to assume that's Lampard instruction. We don't know. Why would he out of nowhere ask him to sit deeper than he did when he played really well? That would be an illogical thing to do. Maybe he did said illogical thing, but it wouldn't really make sense to me. But the thing that still confuses me the most is that now, a couple of weeks ago, he said, and the illness, disease, hit him so hard and physically, it drained him so much. But then straight after he was back negative, he played 5 games in a row. I'm like, so what's that then? That makes no sense. Maybe it took them a while to actually realize and for him to admit that he's not physically at 100%. Sometimes footballers, especially when they move clubs, they don't want to admit things like that. A bit like Morata when he had that back injury and tried to play through it, stuff like that. So it could have been a case of that, but it's simply a case that he can be very high up the pitch playing as an 8. There is a lot of number 8 players. Are people telling me Iniesta was just a defender when he played as an 8? No. Iniesta did a lot of different things. You can interpret a certain position in very many different ways. And obviously, it's a bit more difficult. Say we'll play a Man City, say we'll play a Liverpool. Of course, the 8 won't be quite as attacking as it will be against the Morecambe, as it will be against the Fulham, hopefully on Saturday. But it will still play, a factor how it's interpreted. And like you said, hopefully Mount will be the guy that sits deeper because, he has a bit of a more explosive, more direct passing range, shall we say, which Kai doesn't really use and Kai doesn't do. But Kai has his strengths in the box, whether it's the link-up play, whether it's the movement, whether it's the aerial ability and whatever else. So we definitely need to keep seeing that. And I completely agree on the Hudson-Odoi thing as well. He absolutely has to start against Fulham. And, we need to start relying on him a little bit more. I was very critical of him 2 years ago when he handed in that transfer request under Maurizio Sarri. But I think at that point I had every right to be very critical.
It was an emotional charge for everyone, I think. It's not every day your own. It's not every day your own graduate hands in a transfer request at age 18. Do you know what I mean?
That's the thing, though. He was 18, right? You don't see him moaning now. Apparently, he's all calm and whatever else. Maybe this period obviously matured him a little bit and he understood the situation a bit better. Maybe. But the fact that he handed in transfer requests then, when there was much more reason not to play him than there is now, is a little bit weird. Of course, the difference is that now we have Pulisic and Ziyech as his opposition, then because it was Willian or Pedro. So you can see that a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
But in general, still, we need to start relying on him more. And the things you said, like, for example, starting Champions League games, they're not even making the squad in the next Premier League game, were a bit weird. But then again, you also kind of understand them. Look at Pulisic at the end of last season. Look at the impact that Ziyech has on us. And it is at the moment kind of between Pulisic and Hudson-Odoi, really, once Ziyech is 100% fit to play, because neither of them give us what Ziyech gives us. So it is a tough decision. I get that. But even though Pulisic just looked good, he's kind of lacked end product since coming back from injury. So I think it just has to be Callum for the time being. And this goal showed that as well, even though the touch wasn't actually that great. And, you know, he got, let's say, a little bit away with it because the keeper could have done a bit better. He still got his goal again, you know, made that starting run, made that diagonal run from the wide areas into the middle. And he just does things that we need at the moment, whether he's playing on the left, whether he's playing on the right. He's doing all the right things. And you honestly cannot complain about it. You honestly cannot. I want to bring up a couple of things that, how do I word it? I think we should discuss, because they're like, moving forward, we're starting to get into the rhythm of having a game every 3 days again. We're starting with Fulham, then with Leicester. And what do we do with our midfield? Because we've now played without Kante. Obviously, we don't know how long he will be out for. Let's assume he'll be back for Leicester. Does Kante just go back into the team when he's back? Should he?
I mean, I've always had question marks about how we play with Kante at lone DM against maybe top oppositions, or, you know, like I said, is he going to be able to get the ball through the lines to stop Kai Havertz having to drop deeper, which he has been for build-up play? For me, he has to come back into the team for me, even though he's not in the best run of form, mainly because, well, I say that. To be honest, I haven't made my decision, if I'm being completely honest, because it's hard, isn't it? Because Gilmour is still, you know, learning. He's still young. He's still come back from injury. But at the same time, it's like, do you just take Kante out of the team like that? We are coming up against really a Fulham team with a low block. So it kind of, in a sense, is less pressure for Gilmour to come into the game. But I just don't see a situation where he drops Kante back-to-back games. It's a real tough one, you know. This is the first time in a while. I actually have no idea. I really don't know. What would you do? Because it's a tough one.
The Fulham one, he's suspended for that anyway. So I guess the Fulham one.
Yeah, he's suspended for Fulham. But then the game after that, is it not Leicester?
Leicester. Yeah, Leicester, exactly. And then we come back to playing a good team again, which is the games that he struggled in when he played that lone DM role, which is why I'm just so not sure. But the thing is, I'm also not sure that either Jorginho or Gilmour would actually do better against these higher positions. Yes, some people tell me, but look at Gilmour against Liverpool in the FA Cup and against Everton in his first two games. I'm like, yes, but that was a very different situation to what we're in now. You can't compare that at all. So, like, I'm a little bit like you. I don't really know, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, against Fulham, Gilmour, I guess, has to play because, you know, I think it's shown that he's ready to play games, right? He's ready to play in the first team. Most of the time when he plays in the first team, he plays very well, especially in that 6 role. A lot of people want to see him in the 8, but at the moment, I like him in the 6 because he does take so much responsibility on the ball. He does show leadership when we're in possession. You know, he is a bit more mobile than Jorginho off the ball, with the fact that he's going to trap. He can track runners. I don't think, you know, people throw around the word bullied, but I don't think he's going to get bullied as long as we support him. You know, lone DM doesn't mean just leave them to shield the defense and absolutely nobody help cover in the wide areas. You know, Mason Mount will get back. Mason Mount will help in the fact that he'll get back and form some sort of defensive partnership as he did with Kante. He'll track runners as well. But I don't see Gilmour being bullied. You know, he is somewhat tenacious. Someone that does like to go up for the aerial duels, even though he's very short. So I don't really worry about him having to start against Fulham, to be honest. Long term, though, I just don't see him starting every game, if you see what I'm saying. I don't think, you know, suddenly Gilmour's just going to start every game and Kante will just be dropped outright. But I did flag earlier on in the season that Kante lone DM long term, I don't even know if Frank is 100% sure on it, because, you know, he didn't use Kante lone DM at the start of the season. He took his time to go back to that. And he's also just, you know, technically tracking Declan Rice. For what reason? You know, lone DM probably. And he has, in many games, moved Kante back to the 8, brought Jorginho on or brought someone else on and allowed Kante to go into the 8. And I can see why he likes Kante in the 8, because he likes to do a counter press. Kante will get in your face in dangerous positions when you're trying to build up possession. And then suddenly there's a turnover, and then you don't have to break down a big low block. You don't have to suddenly, start from the back and, attempt to go through every single phase of build up. If you win the ball high up the pitch, which is what he's attempted to do so many times with Mason Mount as well. If you've got Kante and Mason Mount as the 8s trying to win the ball up high up the pitch, suddenly you do have a great turnover where if you get the ball, space starts to open up and you can start sliding in your Timos, your Tammys, your Kais and whatnot. So there is logic behind it. But it will be interesting to see what he goes with in the long term, because I've always said I like Kante as a player, but there's areas where I worry, where the things like the fact that he's not going to be making those defense splitting passes from deep. Cool. That means you have to go out wide. That means maybe there's going to be a lot of crossing, or, if you're going to go through the middle, potentially you need to have a Mason Mount come back and funnel back to make those passes, which he's been able to do switch play. But we do lack a little bit of zip in terms of, for me, getting that ball into Kai in the higher areas. We do lack a bit of that. And that's also partly on the centre-backs. They need to be able to push the ball through the lines as well. Thiago Silva's been great at it. Not so much on the other side. I don't think Zuma's been brilliant at it. He's been okay passing-wise this season. Still feel like there's ways to go in his game and that. Rudiger's been decent since he came back as well. His passing's gone under the radar. But yeah, I still probably would stick with the same kind of setup we've been going with. But I just want to see players in different zones, so to speak, really.
That's the thing, because I don't think the genuine issue isn't Kante playing as a lone DM. I think that the issue is Kante's lack of discipline when he plays as a lone DM, because he pushes everywhere, because he's so used to working so hard and running so much that I don't think, and I firmly believe that this is not a Lampard instruction. The way that Kante is everywhere when he's playing that lone DM role, where he pushes up too high, where he goes too far left, goes too far right, and too much space is exposed in the middle. And I think that is the biggest issue, because he knows he can, defend things, right? We know that he's a good defender, even though recently he's committed a few too many fouls. But that's usually when he's overcommitted forward or sideways too much in the first place, and then he has to run after the guy. And I think that's the issue. And yeah, the passing is certainly a bit of an issue sometimes. But then because of with how we play with using the fullback so much, also in the build-up, not just in the final third, we don't go through the build-up as much as we did with Sarri when the Regista thing was that huge thing. We don't do that as much anymore, probably because Kante plays there. But Kai can certainly be found from, Reece on the right as well. But I think, and as for him playing as an 8, of course, that's exactly why Sarri used him there as well. Mm-hmm. But I think for Kante to be an 8, you need a much more informed and better working front 3 for that to work. Because if your front 3 is not firing real hard, you're taking an attacking player out of it if you play Kante as the 8. As much as he's helpful in the press and everything, once we have the ball all the time, and then a bit like with the Arsenal game, when he ends up in the box and we end up crossing the ball to Kante, that's when he gets pointless. So the front 3 needs to be really good, really in form for it to work when Kante plays as an 8. That's why it was okay on Sarri, because you have Hazard, he did all of the things, right? And you had other players, whether it was Pedro or Willian, when Willian had good spells, and that worked. But then it didn't work when our striker stopped scoring and stuff, because then we need to pass it around more because we're not as clinical and everything. And then Kante just ends up being a little bit in the way, in my personal opinion, when he plays as an 8. So that's my issue with Kante. He doesn't properly fit the 6 on his own. He doesn't properly fit the 8, the defensive 8, because once he gets into the final third, it's sometimes a bit annoying, in my opinion at least. And then the double pivot just doesn't suit the rest of the team. Or him off the team.
I would still maintain prime Kante is in a double pivot. Do you know what I mean? I think he's done well to adapt to the 8. He's done well to adapt to the lone DM, and there's still, he's done well to round off his game, so to speak, and develop as a player in terms of improve his attacking capabilities, improve his capabilities playing in the lone DM and picking up the ball in those zones. But I still maintain the best we ever saw of Kante, which is probably past us now, is in the pivot. In the pivot, next to a Matic, next to a Drinkwater, same, probably similar mode to a Declan Rice, if you want to throw that name out there as well. Right. That for me is him at his best, because you get everything that you look for in terms of getting his strengths out there. It's not to say that he can't do these things. He can dribble in the 8 role, and he can have in the moments where he nutmegs someone against Liverpool in the Super Cup. He can have these moments where he plays deeper and he has a great passing range and he switches play and he plays in, but it's not his strength. His strength in the double pivot has always been, it's always outweighed these other two positions for me. So it's tough because that formation doesn't suit any combination. We went through all of them at the start of the season. Jorginho cover, Kante cover doesn't work. Even though it has, I think, the best win ratio. I think Jorginho, Kante, I don't like any of them now that I look back on it. The last one that I tried to push was Jorginho and Cover, and then they just completely betrayed me against Krasnodar. And I was like, wow, these guys are not it at all. From a mobility and defensive awareness standpoint, it just didn't work. So from that moment, I didn't really like any of the pivot options, and I've always preferred 4-3-3 anyway, just because I feel like, and thank God, finally Frank addressed it in the quotes, and I said it with Havertz, is that just because he's playing the 8, it doesn't mean that he's not taking up positions in the 10. He can move around. That's fine. Like, you're not restricted to just playing in the 8. Yeah, there is a bit more defensive responsibility.
He even said that playing as a 10, then you're always in the half spaces.
Yeah.
It is arguably even more useful to come from a deeper area to move into those areas, because then you're much more difficult to be picked up. Yeah, exactly. To be stopped from picking up those areas. And it should be fluid. Like, people always say you need to be there and you need to be this. No, when people are just in one place, that's when we then complain about there not being any movement. That's what there needs to be. There needs movement. There needs to be fluidity. Sometimes Mount needs to be on the right and Havertz needs to be on the left. And sometimes, the wingers need to switch. And sometimes the winger needs to be in the middle and a striker needs to drop deep. There needs to be these movements. There needs to be this interchanging. And it's not just as simple as saying, he needs to play there and he needs to play there. And, Kante certainly had his most successful period as a double pivot. But then still, I think back to the start of the season, I thought he was much worse when he played in that double pivot. Who knows whether that's down to whoever he was playing next to? Might well be. But at the start of the season, the double pivot really didn't work for him, in my opinion. But of course, guys, we can't look at every message in the chat, because obviously talking to a guest is a bit different than if I'm sat here by myself and just looking through the chat to have kind of discussion points. So if you want to make sure that I do see your chat message, do use the super chat function. Of course, you don't have to, but be sure to subscribe, by the way. Smash the like button. Also, a little bit of graphics now, thanks to my graphics guy. Appreciate that. And again, of course, subscribe to Matisse. Link is down in the description. But I want to go back to something. I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on it, if you saw it at all on Twitter, especially last night. And I even put it in the title because it almost baffled me that this is even a discussion point now. Because I've seen people, I don't even remember who I saw a tweet, but it had quite a few likes, about Kepa, should he start over Mendy against Fulham? Because obviously he had a good performance last night. I thought the save, where he looked like he almost got caught out, was actually a really good save, because I think his positioning was actually good, because he has to expect the cross there. If a cross comes in and he stood on the line, we complain at his positioning. So his position was good.
True. It's caught between two minds, isn't it?
Exactly. And then the guy clearly didn't mean to shoot. He had to react to it, caught it well, kept it out of play, even caught it, not just let it go either, which is one of the criticisms everyone has had of Mendy, even at Lille, or at Rennes, pardon. Is that a case to be made? I don't know, because I personally wouldn't, right? I personally would stick to Edouard Mendy. For the biggest reason, it's just crossing, because Mendy collects crosses. And that is the biggest issue I have when Kepa plays. Of course, it depends on the opponent, and sometimes that's not an issue for us. That's why sometimes Kepa's fine. But is that a thing to consider? Because if you think about it, and let me just run through a few of the goals we've conceded recently. Leeds, early on, partly Mendy's fault. Not all Mendy's fault, but partly Mendy's fault. Came, stopped, and then tried to come again when he should have.
He made a lot of errors coming out of the box, 100%. Two games, I believe.
Exactly. The Everton penalty, he clearly gave that away. At Wolves, I wouldn't criticize him for any of the goals, but I've seen people criticize him for them. At Arsenal, don't think you should criticize him. But the Villa one, it is through his legs from 5 yards. Is it a mistake? No. Should it happen? Probably not either. And City, to be honest, I think he should save the Gundogan one, and I think he should save the Foden one. And if that's, especially the Foden one, that's near post. If you shouldn't concede at the near post, doesn't matter who you are, really. And people consistently talk about Kepa tax, and that's true. But Kepa tax is also what's currently being applied to Mendy, which is why a lot of people praise him a bit higher than he has deserved for about a month and a half now. I'm not saying he was absolutely awful or whatever, but it's still, like I said, I would stick to Mendy. But I just want to know your opinion. Do you think it is a debate that should even be had right now, or
no? I mean, to be honest, I'm open to all debates. You know what I mean? Like it really just depends on certain people will probably have faith in Kepa, and certain people won't. So if you're calling for Kepa to come back into the team, you probably think that there's something to unlock still there, and you feel like there's a chance that he could, recover his career at Chelsea. I personally don't see that. Now, I'm also big on playing players for merit, right? So that's also another thing where people will say, right, well, Mendy's been quite poor for a few weeks now. Put in Kepa, but the only problem I have is that it's the same thing I would have if Chilwell was playing not great, but our option was to bring in like Alonso. I still wouldn't do it. There's certain players where I feel like it would just be a regression for the team in general if we was to bring them back into the team. There's certain players where, for me, they can't come back from where they've been. It's just they just simply will not make it at this club. It happened with Bakayoko when we played him in pre-season in Ireland. I said there's no point, really, personally, because I don't think he's going to have a resurrection at this club. I think he just needs to leave. He's been shot out for confidence, for everything. Every time he puts on a blue shirt, he just looks awful. And Kepa, similarly, I don't think, and there's not really much that can come from him playing, because we know his weaknesses. Cross collection. We saw his stats from last season. This season, the few games he did play, I think he had a lot of errors leading to goals. Probably still one of the top goalkeepers for that, despite not playing any games. So
maybe not in the last 2 games he did play, which were Krasnodar and yesterday, but
but Premier League games. This is Premier League stats. So because I don't think it's going to make the team better, and in fact, I still feel like the team will just regress even further, because that's just personally what I believe. It's not an agenda. It's just, for me, I just don't have any confidence in Kepa whatsoever. No confidence. If I look at the back line, what it's been based on this season when it's done well, it's communication, it's leadership, it's being commanding in the box, it's dealing with aerial threats, not conceding from corners. All of those things, for me, go out the window when you bring Kepa back into the team. So although I understand from a merit standpoint, and from a standpoint of Mendy's not playing well, bring Kepa back in. But for me, I only apply that stuff to players that I think have a future at the club. So Merit, Hudson-Odoi playing well, even though Pulisic, I like him as well. Merit, Kai playing better yesterday. I like Kova. Merit, loads of other positions. But when it comes to a few players in this team, which I just consider to be, they have to leave, Deadwood, there's no resurrection. For me, they're not even really part of the squad. Respectfully, I just think there's certain players that are just here because we couldn't get rid of them in the summer. There's an overload in the squad. Your Marcus Alonso's, your Kepas, players like that. For me, I've already cut ties and I'm just like, cool, you're here, but there's no real need to involve you in any games, because I just don't think you improve the team whatsoever. Yeah,
exactly. And also, get yourself a girlfriend that randomly just donates money to you, and to say Eswatini, but fair enough. But I mean,
like that.
Exactly. I agree with the consensus in general. Like, Kepa's just is not going to happen here. Even if he comes in and does all right now, it's not going to mean him ending up staying. The only thing that's making me question is, does that apply to Mendy though? Because, we have seen the reports of Donnarumma, whether it's someone else, but there's enough reports suggesting that we are still looking at goalkeepers. And then that would suggest, if we do sign one, whether it's Donnarumma or somebody else, that would mean Mendy's future is just a backup. So is that so much more important than Kepa's non-existent future? I don't know. Again, I'm not even trying to say play Kepa, not at all.
I
do believe. Exactly. But that's the weird one with Mendy, and I don't really know what to think about that. I think the whole Donnarumma situation, if you can get him on a free, is he someone you probably should just, get because you can, even with his manager, his agent being Mino Raiola, which you probably don't want to be surrounding your club. But is that the best situation for Mendy, not even getting a season before there's already being talked about a new goalkeeper? I don't know. I think it's all a bit strange, and I think the goalkeeper situation will be one at Chelsea that will, be a discussion point for a few years to come, quite sadly. I don't know if you agree, but
more than likely, yeah. It's a shame, because in his early season form, and even still, I still think he can be a mainstay in the team. I don't initially I didn't know who he was when he came from Rennes. But I still don't see him as a stopgap.
Yeah.
I think there is a top goalkeeper in there for us to get back. And obviously he's had a bad run of form, but I think the whole team has. So for me, I think there's definitely a goalkeeper there where he can be part of like a title winning team. You know, he's got all the fundamentals. He's got all the fundamentals. It's just whether
I completely agree. Like, personally, I've even been surprised with him in a lot of things.
Especially very surprised.
His distribution in some cases in particular, I've been very surprised, very positively surprised. I know he had actually not the worst distribution stats, but because Rennes play consistently long balls, you're not going to have the best pass completion rate, which is obviously understandable. But again, I completely agree with you. But then the club might still be looking at a new goalkeeper. I kind of question the point then. But again, you know, if a really good goalkeeper is available, maybe you just have to strike a little bit. And maybe I guess it's a little bit of a similar situation with. I don't really know the best examples right now, but because we ran out of examples then. But it's a tough one. But let's look ahead to Fulham. I suggest, obviously, we've touched on it a couple of times with the Kante suspension and Billy Gilmore and Hudson-Odoi and stuff. But of course, it has been postponed to Saturday from being meant to take place initially on Friday, because obviously Fulham will now play Tottenham in midweek and then play us on Saturday. Also, you know, it's not a disadvantage to us really, because Leicester also play Saturday before we face them on Tuesday. So Fulham, you know, going back into the Premier League, only won 1 out of the last 6 Premier League games. We need a win. It doesn't really matter how. Almost, you know, obviously we want us to play well, but that's kind of only to give us more confidence for games to come. For the game itself, it doesn't really matter how we play. We just need to get the win. Of course, it would be great to score like 3 or 4 goals and keep a clean sheet, and that would all be lovely. But at the end of the day, all that matters is that we win. And the question is a couple of positions, but I would just ask you what happens there. Now, first of all, we've discussed Havertz should start, Callum Hudson-Odoi should start, Billy Gilmore should start, and Mendy should start. We've discussed that. We know the back four. If Reece James is fit, he plays. Otherwise, Azpi, obviously, right? But first of all, who plays up front? Secondly, is it Ziyech or Pulisic that plays alongside Hudson-Odoi? And, well, I guess Mount plays as well. So I guess it's only really those two. So first of all, do you think it should be Giroud up top? Do you think it should be Werner up top? And also, like I said, the Pulisic and Ziyech situation?
I think it's got to be between Tammy and Giroud up front, mainly because, as I've been saying for a few weeks, even though I would like for us to have, you know, a different way about going through the game and potentially attacking, penetrating the opposition through the middle, we are a heavily based crossing team, and that's not going to change just off the bat. Now, you know, we're playing a 4-3-3. You know, when the wingers are out injured and they are injury prone, let's be real, it would be nice to have the secondary formation of a diamond. That's something I've spoken about a few weeks ago when we had no wingers available. But we're going to go back to the 4-3-3 now. All our wingers are back fit. And I would probably go with Ziyech just slightly over Pulisic at the moment, just because if Reece James is fit, I think that chemistry and that understanding of, you know, overlap, and it is very basic, but it's easy to understand, and it works, right? Reece James overlaps, he can cross, and obviously that allows, because they know Reece James is such a dangerous crosser, it allows Ziyech to get a little bit more space in the pocket. He can cut in and whip the crosses in as well. So for me, that chemistry just has a little bit more understanding and longevity in it than Pulisic and Reece James if you was to go that route. Or you could put Hudson-Odoi on the right wing as well. And that's where it gets interesting, because if you know, for me, Pulisic last few games hasn't been his brilliant best. I think he's been below par. Still have loads of confidence in him, really. There's you know, we know what a great player he is, but there's no harm in taking him out for a game. But if you are going to go, the reason why I guess the debate is so close, because if you are going to play Hudson-Odoi, who at the moment, when he's playing on the right, Havertz does look even better. Although still in my head, you know, I don't worry about that long term, because I do think there's chemistry to be struck with Ziyech and Havertz in that right channel. It's just not happened yet. I do think there's chemistry to be struck there, because they are different players. They're not. I know they occupy the same zones, and a lot of people have been saying that's an issue. It's, you know, they're getting in each other's way, so to speak. But if you have Havertz arriving in the box more, then that will give Ziyech the space in the pocket for him to go beyond, as long as Mount tucks in and we don't lose, you know, too much defensive solidity and transition. So Hudson-Odoi on the left, you can rock that. I mean, they linked up against West Brom, great 1-2 between Havertz and Hudson-Odoi, got a great goal. But equally, they link up really well on the right. For me, at the moment, though, I'd go Hudson-Odoi left, I'd go Ziyech right. And if it doesn't work, so be it. For me, all three of them, talented wingers. So you can bring Pulisic on. But I just think right now, against a low block, probably what it's going to be. Ziyech, that ability to find Hudson-Odoi for that was it. I'm not even sure what goal it was because it all happened so fast. Probably the third goal, I think. But Hudson-Odoi, the Hudson-Odoi ran in behind on Ziyech's pass. Really good pass. And to be honest, there's not many players in our team that are making that pass at the moment against a low block. Of course, the runs need to come as well. It was a great run from Hudson-Odoi. But the pass was perfect. You know what I mean? That doesn't happen very often. So to get past a low block, again, that's the central penetration that people have been asking for, not to just go out wide. That goal there was very much through the middle. That's what people want to see more of. So, for the sheer fact that Ziyech had a good game in that respect, getting the assist, Hudson-Odoi had a great game. I'd go with those two. Take Pulisic out for a bit. And yeah, to be honest, Giroud and Tammy, both of them can make cases to start. I think they've both been really good. I'd probably lean towards Giroud just ever so slightly because I think it's going to be a low block. So I think potentially running the channels might not be so important. And again, we're going to cross so heavily. This is really dependent if Reece James is back. If Reece James is not back, then it's a different ball game for me. But yeah, you're going to get crosses into the box. It would be great to see Havertz and Giroud in the box when the crosses from Reece James, Chilwell, Ziyech coming from that position. When those crosses come in, because they will, it would be great if Giroud and Havertz were in the box, knockdowns and things like that. That's something I'd like to see. But if Tammy plays, I'll have no problem with it. Tammy's been really good this season. I think, he's still adjusting. He's still learning in his game, but his build-up play has improved, running the channels. He's been getting a few assists as well earlier on. He was in a good
involved in the fourth goal yesterday as well, when he did well to get around two people to play Aspi in for the cross. So
yeah, not spoken about a lot, but his link up and assists and his build up, it's all improved. So that has to be given some attention for sure.
For sure. It's just like you said, his aerial ability is sadly not quite there yet. Yeah. And that is something we criticize because he has the height to be really good at it. Because, I mean, Timo Werner is absolutely horrendous in the air. I've never seen him jump higher than half a foot. Like, even that chance after 2 minutes yesterday, I'm like, what are you doing? You didn't even try to jump, mate.
Yeah. He's not prolific in the air, Timo. That's my one concern about him playing lone forward. I know everyone wants to see him play there, and I know he'll get fewer touches, but he'll be more instinctive finishing. I understand all that. But the two areas of the situation is that currently we don't set up to get the best out of Werner. Where we don't really penetrate, like I said, centrally, going in behind. We don't really have many opportunities to go in behind as a team, behind defenses. And then also on top of that, the heading ability. We're crossing a lot, and I'm trying to personally find solutions as to how we can get the best out of what we're doing so we can win games ASAP. Because in my head, Frank is on a game-to-game basis. So I understand a lot of people want to change the tactics and they want to stop crossing and they want to do these things. And long term, I would love us to be a little bit more flexible. But I'm also in a panic station where it's like, he's on a game-to-game basis. If you're going to cross, just do this, and then hopefully it works out kind of thing.
And that is to some extent, understandable. It's not like crossing is this impossible tactic that will never, ever work. Plenty of teams play a lot of crosses, and some of the best teams in the world play a lot of crosses because, and the reason for that simply is, if you're a really good team, the opposition will usually sit very deep against you. And if an opposition sits deep, they block down the middle. And then it's really, really tricky to break them down through the middle. Hence why you're forced to go out wide. Hence why the good teams are very often forced to cross the ball a lot. So it is something we need to get better. My issue hasn't necessarily been the amount of crosses, but that it's always, or very often, the same type of cross. Give it to Reece, whip it. Give it to Reece, whip it. Or Chilwell, all the same. When Ziyech plays, at least we have the in-swingers, like the cross for the second goal yesterday. It was a very different kind of cross than we'll ever see Reece James play, right? Not because Reece can't do it, but because he doesn't come this central like Ziyech did in that position, and he doesn't use the left foot from the right wing. So, that is something. And yeah, as for Tammy and Ollie, it's a tricky one. Yeah, probably if Reece is fit, start Ollie. If Aspi's fit, maybe start Tammy. I guess if Aspi plays, maybe start Tammy. I guess you could put it like that. But one thing I do want to touch on, because you brought it up as well, the having a second system almost, the 4-1-2-1-2 or 4-4-2 diamond, whatever you want to call it. We did use that last night for a little bit, for the last, what was it, 20 minutes. But I thought it was interesting because I thought a 4-1-2-1-2 with two wingers was kind of just a FIFA thing that doesn't exist in real life. But it turns out it does.
No, I mean, the diamond formation with no wingers. We played that on Ancelotti at some point. Malouda was the 10, and Anelka and Drogba up front. And for me, with a team, and I've spoken about why, I've spoken on both sides of it really, where I would like to see it. I would have liked to have seen it, but also I understand that we can't see it potentially because there's been no time to work on it, and there's no, there's no space in between the fixtures. However, there were certain games, the West Ham game, the Krasnodar game, where especially the Krasnodar game because it was a free hit, that potentially you could have used that as a training session to try a different formation, to try a different tactic, because that our wingers are injury prone. I wouldn't be suggesting this if they were just freak injuries and they don't happen very often. The reason why I was so forward with suggesting it is because we know our wingers are injury prone. We know they're going to get injured again this season. And what are you going to do when that happens? Are we just going to play Werner out wide again? Are we going to still rely on him to do things that he can't do and build up? So for me, that's why I wanted to see it potentially worked on, because it's a formation that, again, you can put Tammy and Timo up top. You get the mobility where they have the mobility to go out wide and cover the spaces as they're going to need to do. You've got Kai Havertz. You can also play in that front two of Timo. A left footer coming in from the right, a right footer coming in from the left. They've got German relationship from the national team. Potentially that could work. Pulisic, I've spoken about really personally. I think Pulisic in the 10 role is a very good player. He's got, I know recently it's not been great, but his decision making at his best is usually very good. His arrival into the box under Lampard after last lockdown was very good. And it doesn't change the whole shape of the defense, because you keep your back four, you keep your midfield three of Mount, Kante, Koval.
I'm not sure whether your internet is stopped or whether my internet is stopped. I'm unsure about this. But let me try and see what the situation is. Maybe you're still talking, maybe I'm talking. I don't know. It seems like my internet is working. So let me know, guys, in the chat if Matisse has gone for you as well, because he has for me. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree with all of the things that he said, really. A 4-1-2-1-2 would certainly be, or 4-4-2 diamond, whichever way you want to call it, would certainly be useful, especially because you can hear me, thank you. Especially because of the... Is it working now? No. Maybe he will leave and come back in. Will certainly be a little bit of an issue because of our wingers being so injury prone, right? But the thing is, when we saw it yesterday, when we saw it used yesterday, we saw it the 4-1-2-1-2 with two wingers. Because we had Pulisic on the left and then Hudson-Odoi on the right until Andrin came on. Then it was, Andrin instead of Hudson-Odoi, obviously. But it was a 4-1-2-1-2 with two wingers, not like centre mid. So I was surprised by that, but I still enjoyed seeing it, even if it was only 20 minutes. Still needs to happen at some point, right? But of course, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, we have 127 people watching, which I do appreciate loads. If you're new here, please be sure to subscribe. Honestly, smash that subscribe button if you're new here. I do these the day after every single Chelsea game, honestly. So make sure you subscribe. Hit the notification bell button as well so you don't miss any of these streams. Smash the like button. How many likes do we have? We only have 45 likes, even though we have over 120 people watching. So go down below, smash the like button for me right now. I mean, literally, not even 50 likes, even though there's over 100 people watching. Go down below, smash the like button right now. I want 100 likes right now. That's only just over 50 of you that are watching right now. Need to go down below and smash the like button. So please bloody do so. That'd be massively appreciated. That'd be bloody brilliant. Please do that. And of course, obviously check Matisse's channel out as well. I hope at some point he will come back. Obviously, I don't know what his internet situation is, but that's a couple of things to talk about. Obviously, if you guys have any questions that you want me to discuss, any topics you want me to discuss, and hopefully Matisse as well when he comes back, exactly what Lewis said, press the like button. And Lewis, I don't know what's happening with Matisse. Do you want me to send you the link and you jump on? Let me know in the chat if you want me to send you the link and you jump on for like 10, 15 minutes and then we leave this anyway. Let me know, Jay. Let me know. Doesn't cost you any money, barely cost you any time. See, there you go. He's my T. TMX Oblivion. That's the thing I say. Doesn't cost you any money, barely cost you any time. And I'm just waffling anyways. But obviously stick around for the waffle because we love that. We love that. But any which way, use the super chat function if you want But any other questions that you have down in there as well. Lewis, how on earth? Aha, now I know how you did this now. I didn't even send you the link, but you know how it works anyway. Just turn your camera on because I don't see a camera from you. But you lot are low. You can't even answer. I don't know whether you're talking to me or someone else. You're just talking between each other, aren't you guys? So, fair play. I do respect that. I do appreciate it. Obviously, I love that from you in general anyway. Just setting up G. There you go. There you go, my G. Lewis is coming on, ladies and gentlemen. Lewis is coming on. How sick would that be? How sick would that be? Or will that be? Because he is coming. What else can I say? Like I said, guys, throw something into the chat. A couple of other things that I want to discuss from yesterday's game. I do want to talk about Timo Werner, but I will just wait for Lewis to discuss him. Rice or Kante? See, now that is an interesting question by Mr. Red Pill Lane. Lane, sorry, not Lane. I guess 4-4-3, Declan Rice is probably slightly better suited to it. But like I've said multiple times before, I think it's really, really difficult to judge how Rice will do in our system because he's played for such a different team for West Ham under David Moyes, okay, under Pellegrini as well, but still, they're a much more defensive team. So it will be difficult to, we will have to wait and see to judge it. I'm sure we'll buy him eventually anyway, unless Lampard gets sacked before then, maybe not then, but in general, probably Rice slightly better suited to the system we're playing, but Kante overall is still, of course, a much, much better player, let's be honest. Mount or Kovacic, again, a good question. Personally, I prefer Mount because I think Mount does more. Kovacic is really nice in the eye. Kovacic is great at driving with the ball. Kovacic is incredibly press resistant, but Kovacic never does anything. He half-heartedly defends most of the time. He half-heartedly presses. He never is involved in any assists or goals. It's frustrating in that sense. It doesn't mean he's a bad player, but for too long now, he's been, I don't know, how do you call it? Just not enough from him. Honestly, just not enough from him. And then Ma came here. Ma was here, but I don't know where he's gone. Electric just tripped out. He just texted me, so his electricity has gone. But, ladies and gentlemen, the man himself, the myth, the legend, Mr.
Yes,
Careful.
we said.
How you doing, my G?
I'm good. Sorry I didn't jump on earlier. I'd literally just woke up. Pattern is completely muddled, but better late than never, I guess. In the words of Matisse, lateness is greatness and all that. So here we are. What are you saying, man?
Exactly. I mean, Matisse just told me that his electricity cut out, which is obviously unfortunate for the poor man.
It happens. It happens.
Exactly. You need a super sub. And today Lewis is my super sub.
Like prime Joe Cole back in the 04-05 season. Everyone smash that like button if you haven't done it yet. It's literally a button. Come on, guys.
Exactly what I'm talking about. But I did just say I will basically wait to discuss this not last topic, but one of the last topics. What did you make of Timo Werner's performance last night?
Well, do I want to say we barely found him for the first half? I think, like you said earlier, having 8 men behind the ball, it was going to be harder to try and find him. Eventually got the first goal. Did he play the full 90 or did he get subbed off?
He got subbed off for Giroud after around 70 minutes, I think.
Okay. That's why I don't really remember too much. But for the most part, he didn't really do much wrong. It definitely wasn't one of those disaster class performances. He got a goal which might do well for his confidence, but we can only take it with a pinch of salt against Morecambe. I'm happy that we won. It's a standard result. It's literally the result that we expected going into this game. So I'm not taking too much out of it, but he was all right.
Exactly, that's what I thought as well. Obviously, he got a goal. It wasn't exactly the goal of the bloody century, was it? Now, really tapped it in. But hey, we've also seen him miss that against Leeds, so he first needed to score it. So that was good. There was talk about the third goal, the Hudson-Odoi goal, that he dropped deep, pulling the centre back, meaning it opened up the space for Hudson-Odoi to make the run. I'm not quite sure whether I will give him that credit, just because I'm like,
I need to rewatch that goal to even have a look at that, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. There was a screenshot where he's quite deep as a striker, right? And the centre-back followed him. But I don't think he was ever higher up and then dropped deep. He just stayed not so high up. I think that's what happened.
That does seem like something with Werner, because he's had to drop deep a lot whenever we've been playing him up front. You remember the times back in the 4-2-3-1 earlier on the season when we still had low blocks that we had to deal with? and he never really had the space in behind, so he always had to drop deep to get involved more with the link-up play.
Exactly, that's exactly it. And obviously something that me and Matisse discussed earlier already, but I want to just get your thoughts on it quickly. First of all, I guess the game overall, but Kai Havertz, obviously he did still play in this number 8 role. It wasn't a number 10 role. Frank Lampard even spoke about this after the game. Clearly, somehow he knows what's going on Twitter. Don't know whether he checks himself or whether he has someone telling him, but he knows the criticisms. And he even said, it's all well and good playing as a 10, being in the half spaces, but it's arguably even better if you come from deep to move into the half spaces because you're much more difficult to be picked up. So that is one thing. So what did you think of his performance? And do you feel that him playing as an 8 is the issue, or do you think it was just a case of him getting a bit more used to everything? Obviously, there's certain disease that he had caught and stuff catching up with him. And do you think there's more to come from him now?
I think with Havertz it basically felt like a number 10 role because, hey, big up Matisse as well. Welcome back, man.
Mad. And the whole connection just come off. So I'm saying out in the countryside, things just goes left every 5 minutes.
This is the beauty of live streaming. Things like this happen, but it is what it is. What was it? Havertz in the number 8 role. Yeah, it looked like a number 10 role because of how deep Morecambe was sitting. And that would have potentially worked to his strengths as well. He was one of the best players on the pitch. Again, we're taking over a pinch of salt. He is Morecambe. But the thing you were saying about him playing in the number 8 role, I do think he's struggled with it recently, but that's more his adjustments to the Premier League. We've said he's a versatile player. I've said he can play anywhere in that midfield from a number 6 to a number 10 if you really want to talk about 2 different extremes. I think he can do it. It's just he's adapting to the intensity of the Premier League, and he's adapting to speed and the difference in speed levels from the Bundesliga to the Premier League. So that's an adaptation thing. So it's definitely a bit of time with him. I've been screaming that second half of the season, Kai Havertz's numbers is a completely different story to the first half of the season. So I think the best of him is yet to come as well. But it's a question of time with him. He's going to come good. And I think from the last few weeks, it looks like he's getting there slowly as well. So I'm optimistic. Again, it is Morecambe. I'm trying to be gassed about it, but I'm also respecting the fact that it's a League Two side. We're not hyping this up, especially with the Barnsley game at the start of the season too. But he's getting there. He's looking a bit more positive. He's looking like he's starting to recover slowly but surely. It's all about seeing how the next few games are for him as well. But I wouldn't be too far against him playing the number 8. Like we said, he's a versatile player. He can play in that position. And there were games that he was brilliant in the number 8 role this season as well as the number 10. I think it's just been him trying to adapt.
For sure. And Matisse, while obviously your power cut out, poor man, no one likes a good power cut.
Electric, boom.
Exactly, it's just gone. Hey, it happens like that. But what we quickly spoke about as you were kind of fixing your electricity, Timo Werner. What did you make of him yesterday? Obviously, we touched on the goal itself, which was a decent goal, not really that much to do for him. But like we also touched on, he's also missed those already. So, still put it over the line at least, which was good.
Yeah.
What did you make of his overall performance? Because like Lewis said, you didn't really see that much from him, He didn't really get on the ball that much. In the first half, he had the fewest touches of anyone, 2 less than Kepa. So there are those things, but sometimes as a striker, you have those games. Would we criticize that if he would have scored 10 goals in the last 12 games? Probably not. So, I mean, then he definitely wouldn't have played if that was his form. But still, what did you generally make of his performance last night?
Yeah, I was just about to say, when you said that stat, I remember seeing that he had the fewest touches on the pitch in the first half. And it's not abnormal for a striker to not have a lot of touches, but it was a bit worrying that he wasn't involved in the game so much, even from a central position, which a lot of people have been crying out for him to play. For me, I said it before, personally, I just don't think him playing centrally changes everything. I still think there's parts in his game that have to improve. There's parts tactically that we have to improve to get the best out of him, regardless of whether he's playing out wide or centrally. So I don't think him playing centrally suddenly just changes everything. And I don't think it was a performance where he just instantly has to start the next game, which is a good way of summarizing how he played. I thought, it was good for him to get the goal. That was the checklist. But he didn't do anything for me to be saying, right, I have to start next game. I'm knocking at the door. A lot of people were saying, what if he bangs in 4 or 5 or a hat-trick? What's the situation then? Well, then it's probably a different situation. Maybe he does warrant to start the next game. You have to play a striker on who's on form, right? But even just getting that goal, I don't know if that really even puts a lot of extra confidence into him. It was was a nice tap in, but even when he scored it, it wasn't going crazy. I wouldn't expect him to. It's Morecambe, but I just don't think that game would have pushed his confidence through the ceiling, because I think even he knows his general play. He'd want his general play. He'd want to be more involved in that, I think, for his confidence levels to shoot up. So even though he got the goal, I wouldn't say that everything's just turned around. I think it's going to be a slow upward progression for him if it is upwards, hopefully.
That's exactly the thing, because if you think about it, okay, we have Fulham coming up now. We say he probably doesn't necessarily need to start. Would prefer to go with either Tammy or Giroud up top. And then you look at the Leicester game and you're like, okay, would probably still prefer Oli or Tammy Abraham up front, regardless of what we're kind of going to do. I don't exactly know who we're going to play after that. But if you think about it that way, and now that assuming we won't have injuries either on the wing or up front, right?
Yeah.
When does he play again? Because, if we're talking about strikers and we're talking about rotation, well, you can always rotate between Tammy and Oli. When does he play again? Because, the one team that I thought we're playing against, where I'm like, okay, we should probably start Werner up front. There's a couple. There's League, where he probably should have played up top. Obviously, we had injuries, but in general, probably should have played up top just because there would always be space in behind. One of the games he could actually use his pace. Similar to Man City, didn't end up happening at all, but it was one of the games where, to me, made sense for him to play up top. We just went 2-0 down way too quickly for us to ever exploit that, because after that, they just sat back. And other than that, maybe Liverpool. But other than them three, who do you play Werner against and say, oh, he's so much more useful with his pace than Giroud and Tammy, when everyone will see deep and there's no space to use the pace? So that's why I'm a little bit worried about him. Not because, I know I've been very critical of him and that, but now that we don't have all the injuries, when does he play? I'll ask Lewis first, but I'll also get your opinion after that, Matisse.
Low-key, I've been thinking I'd rather have Timo Werner on the right-hand side. Compared to up front, like looking at the system that we have right now, if we're going to play such a cross-heavy system, it doesn't play to Timo Werner's strengths. And it kind of just negates all of his strengths, to be honest. And you've got so many teams that sit deep against us. He's barely going to have that space in behind. On the wings, at the very least, if we can catch a fullback out, because it does happen a couple times, and he can beat a player for pace. If he's on his stronger right foot, he can either get a shot across the face of goal, or he could put a low cross or a high cross to an Olivier Giroud, or maybe to a Christian Pulisic if it's a low-driven cross into the right box. But if it's on the left-hand side, he always seems uncomfortable. He always seems a bit more predictable as well. I do think he can work on the left-hand side, but he needs a lot of space in order to be able to do it. I think on the right-hand side, you can give him a bit more leeway because he's always on his stronger right foot. He's always going to be in a much more comfortable position than he is on his left-hand side. But up front, other than the teams that you've already stated, I'm not really too sure. I think he'd be best up front against the pressing side, because the pressing side leaves spaces in behind. But if it's teams that sit deep, it just doesn't really work for us, which is why I've been okay with him at the left-hand side in the unbeaten run when we had Tammy Abraham up front, because low-key, Tammy Abraham links up better with Timo Werner than Olivier Giroud has in the games that they played. When it's Olivier Giroud, he seems to hug the touchline 10 times more than he does when it's Tammy Abraham. He seems to find himself in the middle a lot more. But for his optimum position right now in this formation, I would put him on the right-hand side if you want to try and get the best out of him. My best front three would be, based on form, Hudson-Odoi on the left, Olivier Giroud in the middle, Timo Werner on the right.
Would you play Werner over Ziyech or Pulisic on the wing? Right
now, both of them need to get into form, if we're being real about it. Christian Pulisic, I've already said. What?
But has Werner been in form?
Werner's not been informed, but he's still got our most goal involvements this season. So we know what he can do. We just need to get him in the right positions for it. Christian Pulisic, I've already said we need to play him sparingly this season because I can't see him have another muscle injury. I don't care if he plays one game a week or even 30 minutes a week if we can afford to do that, because I just want to protect him and I want to make sure that these injuries don't become something that we permanently lose him to for the rest of his career. Hakim Ziyech as well. I mean, that he didn't start the first half well. I don't care what anyone says to me. People are saying he was one of the man of the matches. No, he wasn't. He had a good second half performance, but I also thought fitness came into account then. League Two fitness compared to Premier League fitness is different levels, and I thought we overran them in the second half. But first off, I thought Hakim Ziyech was poor, losing the ball plenty of times. Some of the crosses were poor from him as well. Second half, he got better, but for the pair of them, I think I wouldn't be against both of them being on the bench. both of them haven't really justified starting regularly over the games that they've had. Granted, Hakim Ziyech has only had 2 games coming back from injury. The same way, he hasn't done as much as Hudson-Odoi has to justify it. Timo Werner, I'm only giving him credit over the last few games because it's been another case where he makes runs and nobody notices him. And I know what he can do. His chance creation is still a madness. He makes a lot of chances. He just needs to get his finishing boots on. But I think on the right-hand side, you have him more comfortable. And if he's more comfortable, you're probably going to get that much more of a clinical finisher out of him.
Yeah, I mean, personally, sorry, I disagree. I don't think we should be playing him over Ziyech, but so it's all a game of opinion, I guess. The Ziyech one, I know where you're coming from, and I know some of his crosses were off, but the thing about Ziyech and why he is so good, in my opinion, is because he keeps trying, and because
eventually he gets there.
Exactly, but he plays passes that no one else even tries. Like, that's why they work. No one in our team would have tried that cross to Havertz that led to Werner's goal. No one other than him would have even attempted it, let alone succeeded at it. And, there's very few players, and, Lampard was asked about this yesterday post-match. The last player to play passes like that we had was Mata. Because, Fabregas could pass like that, but obviously from very different positions. So those half-space passes that Ziyech is capable of playing, whether it's the whipped crosses, whether it's the chipped crosses, whatever you want to call them, or the through balls, no one since Mata has played them, and it's such a weapon to break down teams, even if they don't work every single time. But, we're not going to beat every team 11-0 anyway. So just if it works twice a game, 3 times a game, that should be enough to beat teams. And that's kind of been our issue, that sometimes we can't break down a low block. But Matisse, what about yourself? When do you think Werner even comes back into playing? And also, your thoughts on what Lewis said about Timo on the right.
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree. I wouldn't play Werner personally. I think Ziyech as well has a better chemistry with Reece James, whereas I wouldn't say Werner and Reece James, if he is back fit, haven't really struck up any sort of relationship, so to speak, on that right-hand side for them to be, for me to be guaranteed there's going to be output. I think when everyone was injured, I would have definitely moved Werner to the right instead of playing him on the left, even though, I just don't think he's been effective regardless, and I don't think we play to his strengths at the moment. So with Ziyech back in, I wouldn't play Werner. No, I wouldn't. I think he just needs a bit of time out of the team. I don't think he's really back into form. I know he's got goals and assists, but there's always performances behind that. We know he's taken penalties as well to add on to that. A lot of those assists were coming in.
You went on mute, G. G, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Palace later on, but the performances.
Is that just me? Or
Nah, you're breaking.
Matisse, we can't hear you, bro. Can't hear you, G.
Huh?
Say that again. You were breaking out.
Yeah, you're breaking in and out, G. We couldn't hear you.
Oh, for God's sake. Well, I'll probably wrap up soon then anyway, because my connection's all over the place. But my point was just that I don't think there's been a connection struck up between Werner and Reece James on the right to really play Werner over Ziyech. I think we're just going to have a player where it probably will look out of sorts still because they don't play to his strengths. So I wouldn't go for it.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and it's tough when you sign and you play and you sat there. When does he play again? That's not the situation you want to be in. But sadly, I think right now that is the situation we're in. And if Lampard is really tough and does what he always claims that he does and plays people on merit, then personally, I don't think Timo Werner should be anywhere near the starting 11 for a good while. But obviously, how can he get his form back without playing? So that's where it's tough being a manager, I guess. And that's why it's easy us sitting here and just waffling. Because we don't actually aren't taken accountable for those decisions. And I guess maybe it just happens for Timo that he comes on in games and manages to come back into it and start scoring goals, and then we sit there. Well, he has to start now. Hopefully that happens. Hopefully Timo just gets adapted. Manages to adapt to playing up front as well. Because realistically, I don't think out wide he's better than any of our 3 wingers long term. Maybe initially in form wise, you could sometimes make a case for it, but I think long term, if he's going to make any position his own, it's going to have to be up top, because I don't think he's going to play out wide over Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi or Ziyech. So he needs to find some sort of solution to his issues. But because we've been going for an hour and 10 minutes already, and I have to be jumping on another stream later on Dammy's channel, so be sure to check that out later on, ladies and gentlemen. Just quickly, let me get your guys' score predictions, I guess, for the now Saturday game against Fulham, because like me and Matisse touched on already, we really, really need that win. Matisse, why don't you go first?
Score predictions. I don't like to play this game because it's always probably bites my ass here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with a 2-0 Chelsea win. I think we can wrap up Fulham. They're, I don't want to say they're 18th because I don't want to jinx it, but yeah, we should have enough quality to beat them. And I'm hoping that we can see a few more of the signs that we saw of players, particularly Havertz and Hudson-Odoi, against Fulham. Yeah, I'm hoping we can still see those good signs that we saw against Morecambe.
Exactly, I agree. And Lewis, yourself, what score prediction?
I got no reason to feel too confident, but it's Fulham. We should be beating Fulham. If we don't beat Fulham, that's going to be embarrassing in itself, and they will never ever shut up about it. I do think it's going to be a tight game. I think they've got a lot more solid defensively. We're going to struggle to break them down a little bit, but I'm going to go for a slightly, maybe too optimistic 2-0 win to Chelsea, only because it is a West London derby. I am expecting them to have a little bit of heart about this one. Otherwise, more questions are coming out. But yeah, 2-0 win to the Chelsea.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I know it's only Morecambe, but because we have games, look at Krasnodar. Yes, Krasnodar are better than Morecambe, obviously. But there was still a much lower opposition to ourselves. And look at us how we were playing. We couldn't score goals, we couldn't create nothing. And we were sat there what on earth was that? And yes, we were, just ignoring it almost because we were in such good form and the game didn't matter. But, look at the run that happened after that. Since that, it hasn't exactly been great. So to see a little bit of a better performance, especially in the second half, and yes, of course, fitness in the second half, I'm 100% agree with you, Lewis, did make a big difference. And also the fact that we did manage to get that 2-0 just before the break was big in a much more comfortable second half. But I don't know, it somehow made me more positive. By the time I do a preview on Friday, I might have changed my mind. But for the time being, I am quite confident, and I am going to predict a 3-0 win. Hopefully I'm right. Hopefully a couple of Havertz goals and Hudson-Odoi goals, and maybe even Werner comes off the bench and gets a goal as well. Why not? But guys, I think we've been going for long enough. Matisse, first of all, massively appreciate you coming on. Of course, I'm sure I'll be on his channel again in the future. I'm sure he'll be on my channel again in the future as well. Make sure to just subscribe to his channel. Link is down in the description, or if you hit the @ in the title, that should work as well and bring you directly to his channel. Obviously, I haven't added Lewis to the title or the description because it wasn't necessarily planned that he would be on. But of course, just type in his name, Carefree Lewis G. Oh no, is it Carefree Lewis G on YouTube?
Yeah, we still got that.
Exactly.
I'm this close to 20k as well, so I need every like. Guys, help the kid out, please.
Exactly. Help the man reach his 20k. What a dub that will be. So, subscribe to that. Just type in his name. It's not that difficult. Carefree Lewis G. It's quite simple. So just type that in, subscribe to him. Subscribe to me if you haven't already.
Rhymes for you lot.
Exactly. See, it's such a beautiful name, rhyming and all sorts. But yeah, subscribe, smash the like button, leave your thoughts on the stream, I guess, down in the comment section below if you're watching this at a later point. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Thank you to you boys for coming on, especially you, Matisse, of course, took an hour of your day's time, so appreciate that. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Up to Chelsea, and I'll see you next time.